The Prospector is an exotic power grenade launcher available from Engrams in Destiny 2. The first perk, Excavation, will allow you to hold the trigger down when firing a grenade. Releasing the trigger will detonate all grenades simultaneously. The second perk, Full Auto Trigger System, gives this weapon full auto. So right off the bat, the damage on Prospector in PvE is pretty substantial. The 8-round magazine coupled with the high rate of fire makes for a very high amount of burst damage, as long as the target you're hitting actually allows grenades to detonate, that is. Hitting vehicles or other damageable objects will usually just cause the grenades to bounce off. Fortunately, the initial impact of the grenades is pretty high. Emptying a magazine on the Thresher public event will still take off about half its health just from impacts alone. Not quite the insane damage from, say, Merciless, but keep in mind these grenades are capable of splash damage, so you'll be able to tickle groups of tightly packed enemies on occasion. Grenade launchers also have the wonderful quality of staggering enemies, which makes landing successive grenade hits substantially easier. Since this is a full auto grenade launcher, I was afraid the recoil was going to be too unwieldy, but surprisingly it doesn't require much of any recoil control to land your shots all on the same target. I did find hip firing to be easier than aiming down sights, but I think that's just a personal issue. I like having a very clear indicator of where my shots are going to go, and grenade launchers just give you kind of a vague idea. My biggest criticism of the weapon is that the two main perks are actively detrimental to each other. While full auto on a grenade launcher is great when you want to empty the entire magazine into something, it also completely gets in the way of the excavation perk. If you try to time 1 or 2 shots detonating, you'll usually have to fire a few more rounds just to sacrifice those. Maybe the idea was to have a bunch of shots land somewhere and then blow them all up at the same time for massive damage? Maybe having the grenades be sticky instead of bouncy would be a little bit better of a way to achieve this goal, since right now you end up wasting a bunch of shots trying to detonate the grenades at the correct time while they're in the air. The reload even gets in the way of this, since once the new magazine is ready to fire, all the older rounds will detonate. The only workaround I found is just run around to delay the reload effect as long as possible until the grenades will explode on their own. As I said earlier, in PvE the Prospector is going to be a solid damage dealer, provided you're facing an enemy where grenades will explode on impact. The difference between only impact damage and impact plus grenade explosion is pretty substantial. One thing I've started to notice with a lot of the exotic heavies is that they all end up doing around the same damage. Prospector, Merciless, Wardcliff Coil, and Legend of Acreus all end up doing around the same amount of damage, just over longer periods of time. Since I ended up using public event bosses as the litmus test, I've noticed that expending all their ammo will pretty much yield the same results, just over different times. The only minor exception is that Merciless does seem to do the most damage out of the group to single targets in the least amount of time. All the other power weapons seem to have area of effect properties tied to them, which is nice since it does allow them to be used in a few more scenarios. My criticism earlier does greatly apply to PvE. The full auto gets in the way of timing explosions on targets you might have missed, or maybe having them detonate after impacting a target that doesn't allow grenades to explode on it. I have to question why full auto is really even on this weapon. Yes, it's great when you're rapidly landing shots on targets, but I haven't had problems hitting max rate of fire on normal grenade launchers anyway. It feels like you're sacrificing a ton of possible utility to maximize damage in one possible scenario. All that being said, I don't think I'll ever get tired of firing an entire magazine of grenades into a target and just watching all of the explosions. That really is fun. Now over in PvP, I can't see a reason to use this over a legendary grenade launcher, especially when that interaction between the two main perks can just cause so many problems. The only time you're going to kill someone is when you get a direct hit, since the blast radius is really low on this gun. The high velocity speed of the rounds does make getting that direct hit pretty easy though. I was landing my shots with only a few games under my belt. The 4 rounds you get from an ammo pickup do go away rather quickly due to that auto fire. I found myself accidentally using 2 shots, which was supremely annoying since it meant I only used half my rounds to maybe land a kill. If I wanted to do that, I'd just use a normal rocket launcher. In short, the Prospector is an odd piece of equipment that feels like it's fighting its own identity. It wants to play the role of well-timed explosions via triggering them yourself, and also play a high damage dealing exotic via the auto fire. In doing so, I feel like it can't reach its full potential. In PvE, if you really like grenade launchers and are okay with one that has a bit of an identity crisis, then Prospector will be right at home with you. In PvP, I'd just use some of the legendary options out there and save your exotic slot for something else. I hope you found the information here helpful. If you did, a positive rating would be appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.